Hey everyone, this is Ben, and yeah, you better believe it, I'm still on that Baldur's Gate 3 train. Now, I first played the original Baldur's Gate way back in 1998, and I played the hell out of both that and Baldur's Gate 2 when that came out in the year 2000. Took me a while, but in the last few years I have got really into tabletop D&D, including DMing my own games, and I've got a few ideas of how I would like to see the game progress and move forward in a direction that actually translates a lot of the things that you see in a D&D tabletop into a video game format. I would also love to hear your ideas on this, so if you've got anything else you'd like to add, please leave me a comment below. I would love to have a conversation with you about that. Okay, let's get started. First of all, for me at least, deception and disguise is a huge part of a lot of D&D campaigns, and I think it would be really cool if the game could make use of that somehow, whether it be putting on a uniform, or lying your way into a situation, maybe forging paperwork. I do appreciate that, obviously, without a human DM, there's only so far that the game is going to be able to go in terms of having scripted scenes available, but if the rules for disguise could be included in some form, that would be fantastic, and that would really allow for a more free-form approach, because one of the things that I appreciate from RPGs is being able to talk through situations. Vampire Bloodlines, for example. It's really nice to be able to, at least in the first half of the game, talk your way in and out of situations, whereas the original Baldur's Gate games, mostly you found yourself fighting past a certain point.
What is my catch?
Time to move?
Another thing I'd really like to see is more use of the environment. In the games that I play, I mean, in our main game where a lot of the players are getting onto 10th, 11th level, half of us have the ability to fly all the time. And while I don't think that for a second players should be able to just fly anywhere, being able to make use of verticality, to climb, to go underneath in sewers, etc., would be a really nice way of being able to deal with situations in Baldur's Gate 3. Improvisation is a huge part of why I enjoy Dungeons & Dragons tabletop. In our main campaign, where a lot of the players are getting onto 10th, 11th level, half of us can fly just all of the time. For me, the introduction of verticality, of flight or climbing mechanics would be a really cool way of allowing players to improvise their way through situations. This would be aided by the inclusion of physics-based improvisation. Now, one of the developers did mention in an interview recently that they were expecting players to be able to do things like, for example, pick up a table and throw it at an enemy, or perhaps kick it over and use it for cover. And as many objects as possible that could be physics-enabled within the world would allow this to really blossom and to allow players to demonstrate their improvisational skills. Why should I not be able to, for example, pick up a bottle and throw it to make a distracting noise, like I would in a stealth game like Thief? Dungeons & Dragons, after all, stealth is a huge part of that. And I think this feeds into as well the idea of being able to do more than just kill your enemies. A lot of the time in D&D, we will be fighting an enemy with the intention of knocking them out or capturing them or interrogating them in some form. And again, while I don't necessarily expect there to be full dialogue for every single enemy, every single NPC if they were to be interrogated, it would be cool if maybe your standard bandits had a couple of responses, and it'd be great if there was the ability to decide whether you were going to deal lethal or non-lethal damage, just like you can do in D&D 5th edition. This also links to the creative use of spells, and I'm not just talking about combat spells. Of course, Larian being the developers of Divinity, I'm fully expecting things like firing a lightning spell at water to electrocute the pool, that sort of thing. I'm fully expecting that to be in the game. What I would like is for less combat-oriented spells to have more functionality within the game. So the physics system I'm talking about would be utterly fantastic with a spell like Mage Hand or Unseen Servant that would allow a wizard to manipulate objects from a distance, perhaps behind an enemy's back. The use of thaumaturgy or prestidigitation, which is a fantastic word, to create distractions or surprise the enemy in some form. That would be really cool to see. Specifically, I'm thinking of something like Sending, which if you're a Critical Role listener, you'll know that Jester uses about 20 times an episode. Being able to communicate with either friendly or enemy NPCs over distances would be great. And yeah, okay, I'm not expecting there to be a full dialogue system like you're talking to a human, but just being able to open up the dialogue with somebody using that spell, that could be a really cool use of that. On the subject of magic, for me at least, I think that some of the coolest parts of the old Infinity Engine games, whether that be the Baldur's Gate games or Planescape Torment, was the cool, weird, planar, magical stuff. I'm thinking like the planar sphere that existed in Athkatala in Baldur's Gate 2, or pretty much the entirety of Planescape Torment. The bizarre nature of the planes, of the hells, needs to be explored, I think, in a D&D game, because for me that's one of the main draws, is this really weird fantasy stuff that you just don't get in other fantasy settings. And to explore that, either in the plot or side quests, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Oh, and yeah, I totally do want player strongholds. The Mage Sphere was amazing in Baldur's Gate 2. I can fully expect there to be a castle for a fighter, a temple for a cleric, all that sort of stuff. Please, please do that. It's fantastic.
My hotel's as clean as an elven arse.
Something that my players do when I'm DMing is they try to run businesses. So why not let a higher level player invest? Why can we not open a tavern or buy a tavern? Maybe either in Baldur's Gate or in a surrounding town. Let us do that. Let us make a bit of side income, have a bit of downtime. All the things that D&D campaigns tend to explore, but the games usually don't.
There are others. I can show you. Please. Please.
Skill checks is something that I've thought of quite a bit, and while I'm pretty sure that the way this will work is there'll be a set DC, a difficulty for a particular task, and the player will effectively make a d20 roll with their skill modifier to see if they've managed to pass or fail that skill check. What I would like to do, and this is something that I like to do as a DM, I would like to see there be varied responses depending on how well or how badly you've rolled that roll. So if you roll a natural 20 or a natural 1, there should be something different that happens because you've done that. Maybe not, maybe I'm going a little overboard on that, but I think that'd be nice and cool. We are also, I think, fully expecting there to be some kind of multiplayer DM mode, which would allow one player to DM the game, to put down monsters and create challenges in that way, possibly even creating their own dungeons and levels, that sort of thing. I really, really would like this to include dialogue, and I think that a particularly skilled DM effectively could run a Dungeons & Dragons campaign in Baldur's Gate 3, in the version that I have in my head, which would be them setting out areas, either using the maps from the game or creating their own, setting out challenges, setting out NPCs with dialogue trees that you could click through, and of course, what would be really cool would be if then you could have proper improvised dialogue. Players would speak over a microphone or type, the DM would respond in character. I mean, that would basically be the best possible video game of Dungeons & Dragons. There's a touchstone here I'd like to mention, which is an indie game from about 2014 called Sleep is Death. Basically what that allowed you to do was one player was a storyteller, and then they would link up with another player who was the character in that story, and each would effectively have a minute to improvise what happened next. And it could be scripted to a certain extent, but it would allow players to play through a story and interact with it in the way that they wanted to, and then the DM, the storyteller, whatever you want to call them, would improvise things, would, if they needed to, because it was a pixel art game, they would draw new items, characters, locations within that 60 seconds, include the dialogue, etc. Something like that would be really cool, sort of a quick-fire improvisational mode. I don't know how well that would work, and Sleep is Death, while a cool experiment, never really went that far. But it was really cool, so if that could work, I'd love to see it.
You couldn't have made a better choice.
So these are just some of the things that I'd like to see in a Dungeons & Dragons game, and I really hope that Baldur's Gate 3 can at least do some of these things, if not all of them. What do you think about my ideas? If you like them, like the video. If you dislike them, don't press dislike. No, don't do that. What I really love to do is I'd love to hear from you. So, as I said earlier, leave me a comment. If you've got any extra things that you'd like to see, or you think I'm an idiot, tell me. I need to be told I'm an idiot sometimes. I think we all do. Tumbling.
You must gather your party before venturing forth.
More videos to come on the topic of Baldur's Gate 3, and yeah, I am aware it's E3 at the moment, so I'm going to be doing some videos on that as well. Until then, I'll see you later. Specifically, I'm thinking of
An elven arse.